With the state legislature for 24 years. She was first elected to the state assembly in 1978, running as Prop 3 Tax Cut Avenue. In 1988, he was elected to the Senate, where he served in leadership and authored a tough anti-drunk driving bill. He returned to the state assembly in 1996 and served as a Republican leader. In 2002, Bill was elected to the Board of Equalization, the nation's only elected tax commission. He was re-elected in 2006 with more than 1 million votes. As a board member, Bill has fought for justice for taxpayers and has advocated for taxpayer rights and public accountability. In private life, he is husband to Sherry, who's here with them today. And he's father to Tim, Mike, and Jacob, and grandfather to Katie and Gavin. Bill is teaching Katie and Gavin some of his favorite things in life: faith in God and American history. As the grandkids grow older, Bill is sharing with them his favorite outdoor pursuits: hiking, biking, boating, skiing, and golf. He worships at the Warehouse Ministries in Sacramento, and we must read this report that he puts out. It's just great. The version that you get in by email has a lot of history in it, as well as a pretty thorough analysis of what's happened in Sacramento. Without further ado, Bill, would you please come in the first?
Al, thank you much. Thank you for the invitation to be here. Great lunch, and it brought me back. My political career started out at the County Taxpayers Association, where I and my business in real estate volunteered as part of the San Bernardino County Taxpayers Association. And as you've already seen from your good questions to Bob today, the watchdog work that the associations do is irreplaceable. So I commend all you members. I encourage those that want to join. It's a great group and does an important work just by being there on the watch, because government needs those kinds of questions to be held accountable at all levels. We have some taxpayers associations in Sacramento. My biggest regret is they tend to represent the bigger businesses in the state, whose interests often diverge from my business that I have and a lot of your businesses, I suspect, and it's not as represented as I would like to see it. And that's what my mission has been as the legislator and a Board of Equalization member, to really represent where the wealth is created in California, to represent the people that are willing to put their lives into this California dream for themselves and their family. And so I commend you for all that you're doing. Thanks for the plug in the newsletter. This is the only print version around. The rest of it's all electronic. So I need your email address. My email address is on there, so grab one or give me your card or whatever, and I'll put you on the list. So this is a special edition, just for you today. It's the same one I put out this week, but it's the only one actually in print that you can take home with you. And I developed it to comment about state government and California government and politics. They have the dominance of state government over everything is deplorable. And I'm not sure enough Californians actually understand that, and with a good report you heard today from your CIO, Bob, that the county has very little flexibility in things that it can't do. And it's simply a state law that orders them to not have flexibility. That state law can be changed tomorrow if legislators are willing to do so. But the interest groups that are all over Sacramento really prevent that kind of change from taking place. And that's why I'm kind of the optimist. You asked me to talk about the budget. As bad as this budget is, it makes me feel better for the reason that it takes it that bad for people to finally stand back and say, we got to change things. We got to do it differently. The mandates we had before, the programs we committed to, the entitlement promises to everybody in the state, legally or not, that we made, we're going to have to revisit all of those. It didn't happen in the last few years when we were told it was a crisis of historic proportions. It's now happening. And I really commend the governor for putting together a package of cuts and changes that hits everybody. Now, I don't like them all. there's a number of, I had an individually I'd vote against, but as a package, he has made the first attempt of anybody to solve the entire problem. And to his credit, it's more and more real permanent cuts as opposed to borrowing or one-time cuts. In fact, the worst part of the county grab is that it's a loan. But it doesn't make the state's problem any better in the long run. It simply postpones that day, an inevitable day when that $2 billion, if it's enacted, has to be paid back with the interest that the old Prop 1A dictated. It'd be better for them to really confront the whole thing now. And it's interesting to me, we talk about these big numbers. Yes, the state's revenue is dropped, which is so unusual. Our revenues always climb, just a question of how fast. This time it's below last year. It's still going to be, in the coming year, somewhere in the $80 billion of your money sent to Sacramento to be redistributed. Now, $80 billion is still a big number to me. This is general fund only. This is the other thing that is so strange about California government. The things that you and I depend on mostly, Caltrans, our state highways, Department of Motor Vehicles to register our vehicles, those are not in the general fund. They're not part of this game at all. They're special funds. And so the things that you and I have the most to deal with are the ones that aren't even in the debate on this. Now, those who have kids and grandkids, education is clearly part of that. Those that use county services, obviously, the sheriff, the jail, and the other programs been talked about are there. There's going to be impacts on every government in California. But for the most part, the taxpayers aren't the tax beneficiaries. It's a real disconnect. It's a redistribution of wealth, sometimes just overt in some of our welfare programs, taking your money and giving it to someone else. And I have real problems with that. You know, one, it just takes away the independence and industry and self-reliance because you're dependent on the state. Why go out get a job? The check's already coming in. In fact, the check's bigger, the less of a job you have. That to me is, if you want to incentivize something, that's the backwards way to do it. And they should be looking at all these programs. So the budget stinks, but that's the good news. And ideas that you have, like some of the questions you asked today on privatization and all, that's what the state of California should be going through. That's what your legislators should be doing. The governor's given them a list. And basically, it's down on the table to be dealt with. Either take this list or you substitute. Because the total number is fixed. It's $24 billion, it's not fixed, it's growing. But it's big. So you can't take it off the table, you've got to substitute. Legislators aren't real good at that, picking between interest groups, they just want it in all ways. And so I've advocated to them, just vote the governor's budget out. It's his budget, it's his stinky budget. If it doesn't work like some of us think parts of it won't work, it's his problem. We can work on it later, we'll be back to it. But at least it gets us to a decision made, and we go forward on that, and we revisit all these programs and issues that are out there. I had this long debate with my office staff yesterday on CalWorks to say, isn't that the program that really helps poor people? And I said, well, that was the idea. But we actually enacted CalWorks in '97 that had work requirements in it. Had a 5-year term limit, 5 years of lifetime benefits, and then you're out. Those have all been watered down and wiggled away by the state legislature and the prior governor to the point that CalWorks is one of those, like the Board of Equalization, the most misnamed government programs. It doesn't do what the name says it does. And it should be revisited. And if we would, as opposed to getting rid of it, the legislature come back and say, how about bringing back the '97 version that had strict time limits, had work requirements or education requirements built in. In other words, if you're going to get money from the state taxpayers, you got to do something for it. That might be a great reform for the long run, and do a substitute there with other kinds of things. That's what I hope the legislature does. The problem is they don't have a lot of time. We are also running out of cash because we can't even do short-term borrowing. They have taken away our credit cards for the most part, which is a good thing. We're going to run out of cash within about 4 to 6 weeks. It's always a hard number because on one hand it's revenue coming in, and the other hand it's spending going out, and And on the third side, it's what banks might do something for you in the short run, or other investors might be able to accomplish in short-term paper. So it's a hard number to nail down, but it's a real deadline that will occur if nothing happens. It's not enough time to do all these things, which is why I'm saying just adopt the governor's thing. Then work on making it work or substituting later to do that. But everybody involved with government, everybody in any level of government in California, either a beneficiary, an employee, or involved in some way, is going to feel the impact. This one, we're too locked into some programs. Our debt service, which we can't avoid at all, is way too high in the state. We do not have the federal government's ability to print money, so we do have some functional limit there. And to a certain point, we have what's hanging over us is the banking community. If they say we won't loan you money because we don't think you're fiscally responsible, that's the end of the game. We're like some third world nation. The World Bank cuts off. It's just you got to reform your system and do that. So there's a lot of talk about how we do the spending side. There's upcoming talk, which I hope you get involved with. July 15th it is, I think, is the Tax Commission is to issue its report and recommendations on California's tax economy. I have no confidence it's going to be any good. I'm eager to read what it says and does. Clearly, we have a hyper-progressive income tax system for personal income taxpayers. The unbelievable number of it's almost 50% of Californian adults don't pay income taxes because their income's too low, because we're too progressive. They have enough income to live on, but they don't pay income taxes. The huge chunk, it's like almost, it's a third, I think, of our income taxes are paid by the top 10 or 15% of earners. If a few thousand people leave the state, and they happen to be that group, we go in the tank even more, which is kind of how we got here. That's what happened. In fact, a huge number of our caseload at the Board of Equalization, where we handle all the appeals that taxpayers dispute their taxes, a huge amount on income tax disputes is residency. When did you leave the state of California? The guy says, I left a long time ago. The Franchise Tax Board says, no, you didn't. And it's a terrible discussion to have because people, particularly of that kind of wealth, they have multiple homes, they can live anywhere, and what does it make a person's residence? Can you self-declare? Franchise Tax Board says, no, you can't self-declare. We reserve the right to go in and investigate. And so we have one guy, he was so wealthy, he lived in Incline Village, and he drove down to Reno every morning and flew to Los Angeles. His office was on Wilshire Boulevard. His residence, his only residence, was in Nevada. His work was in California. Where did he live? The board voted, I think, 3-2, but his tax residence was in California. That's your office. And I was on the two side. The two Republicans voted no, saying you can't do that to people, or if you're going to do it, you got to tell them in advance.
Steal.
And there's no evidence he moved out of state to avoid taxes. He liked living in Incline Village, and he could afford his private jet. And we have others like that who are not quite as wealthy, but they moved to another state, but they still had family here, so they visited California. Or they had a bank account at a nationwide bank, and they never changed it, so their home bank was technically LA. But they never went to it. They went to the ATM and the branch in Arizona, Nevada, wherever, Oregon, Utah. Franchise Tax Board says that's evidence you're a Californian. No, it's not. I have nothing to do with that bank. I don't like that bank. So things like that really start to hurt on that side. And so I don't know what this tax commission is going to accomplish on that unless they enact some real reforms. But a real reform to make our tax flatter would make about half the population in California for the first time pay income taxes. That will not be very popular. Republicans will vote against it because they're against any tax increases, at least most of them. Democrats will vote against it because they say we're the ones helping out the lower income people. That's exactly what the tax increase we focused on. You think about it, even if it's $1, even if it's $10 or $15 or $20 of income taxes, that increases their investment in California by infinity %. They have a stake in state government for the first time. They have a stake in who their representative is. They have a stake in whether the tax might go up higher if they don't watch out. I think a flat tax is the way to go. I don't know how to get there. I don't know how to get there. This may be so desperate times now that it actually comes on the table to do that and make that accomplishment. They talk about, one of the recommendations may be extending our sales tax to all services. Okay, economically, I understand the principle that if I go and travel somewhere for entertainment, there's no sales tax. But if I go buy the book or the movie about the place I was going to travel to, there is sales tax. There's a disconnect there. The problem is I don't trust the government to lower the rate by half and keep it there. They want to make money off the deal. Then you have all these other problems of how do a lot of professional services be done when the professional could pick up and move to Nevada and still give you the same kind of service as a lawyer or a bookkeeper or a CPA as they're doing now, because you're using email and the internet already, even though you're down the street. It's easy for a lot of professionals to move out to a lot of those kinds of services. So it's, I don't know what they're going to do, but watch that one, put that on your agenda to accomplish. Let me just switch to the Board of Equalization and then open it up to questions. Just the other message. What the government doesn't realize is how much taxes hurt. We were talking at our table during lunch. The middle image of my colleagues in the Board of Equalization is some huge corporate campus in Silicon Valley. When they think of a California taxpayer, the average California taxpayer, they don't think of me. They don't think of you. They think of Oracle, Intel, or Apple. And they're all millionaires. And then plus the company itself and all the employees. Their middle image is so off base of where the real strength of California's economy is that it warps all their understanding of that. So on these tax cases, my biggest surprise when I was elected to the board, with your help, thank you for voting for me, was that tax law is upside down from criminal law. When you come before us on appeal, the government is always right. Rather than the government prove the accused guilty of the crime, the taxpayer has to prove that the government made a mistake. Now, of course, the government already has all the taxpayers' records. And so it's the ability to prove a mistake is very, very difficult. Taxpayers do not win very often. And most of them get there because they made an innocent mistake, a math error on their tax return. The post office failed to deliver it and they didn't check a plug for e-filing, other ways to get an answer back from the tax agencies. We had one case where the guy says, I know the mailbox in Malibu that I mailed it from. I can remember mailing it. And I mailed the IRS at the same time. They got it. You guys didn't. And he was penalized for failure to file. He couldn't prove he filed. And so the government said you didn't file. He couldn't prove the government wrong. He had no video camera at the mailbox. I kept asking the government, what kind of proof would you accept? Notarized witness statement from the spouse saying I went down to the mailbox with him? What? They said, no, we really wouldn't because the spouse was an interested party. Hey, there's almost no proof they would accept. The worst one, it still brings me tears. This guy showed up and he was introduced and he sat down at the taxpayer table. And he said, first of all, let me explain, I'm not the taxpayer. And he was probably my age. He says, it's my dad. My dad's too sick to be here. He's been retired for over a decade. His health is deteriorating. And what you people did is, I don't know what to do with, because I'm now told that I have to prove that he didn't earn any money. And it's my fault. I take the blame. He lives by himself in the house in Santa Barbara. I didn't check. He did not file his income tax return for 2 years. He's been in ill health. He's been depressed since mom died. I should have known these things. I was busy in my life. And the law says if you don't file a return, the government can make one up for you. And I stress the words make up.
Yeah.
They took the 1099s and the stuff he had. He had some mess of CD accounts or something. He took that, put that in. And then they added $40,000 of income 2 years running, with no paper record at all. They had nothing on it. And failure to file is like 10% of the taxes due. And then interest, we charge 9% interest rate, usury rate if you can get it. We hit this guy for so much, and he said, Dad can't afford to pay it. I mean, I'll probably have to pay it and decline against us. But I have nothing to bring with me other than to tell you the story that he made a mistake. He made a mistake. So I turned to the Franchise Tax Board. Sorry about that. They sit on this side of the room. I'm not saying you're the Franchise Tax Board. I turned to the Franchise Tax Board and said, help me out here. I understand the law gives you the power to make up the tax return form, but what did you use, a dartboard? Oh no, we use census data. In the 2000 census, the Census Bureau surveyed income levels of various professions, and we found out that this gentleman is a California licensed insurance agent. I said, okay. Did you contact any of his clients? No, we don't have to do that. Did you contact any of the insurance companies that he would broker? No, we don't have to do that. Well, what did you do? The census data. I said, what do you mean? He says, there's a line in the census that says an average insurance agent in California earns $40,000 a year. I said, okay. Did you make any allowances that he was not a life agent but a casualty agent? Did you check out what his insurance business was? No. Did you make any allowances that his market in Santa Barbara might be different from an insurance agent in downtown LA? No. We just took the statewide average and assigned it. It's up to him to prove it wrong. And the son says, they told me this again and again. How do I prove it wrong? I've given you all of his bank accounts, and you say you could have others. We haven't found yet. I've actually gotten affidavits from some of his old clients who said, no, I do business with so-and-so now at your dad's recommendation. They won't accept any of that. Say, we could have gotten new clients. He could have found a new insurance company to do business with. And this elderly man, living basically, it sounded like in Social Security and interest off a CD or so, was found to owe taxes on $40,000 of income for 2 years, plus failure to file, plus interest. It worked out to, well, the interest and penalties were actually more than the tax, I think. It was upwards of $20,000. It's probably as much as he makes in a year at this point. 3-2 vote. He lost. I believe that you ought to take the taxpayer's testimony as evidence. The government says it's always self-serving. They'd always say that they did it their way. So they could be telling the truth. There's a possibility that taxpayers telling the truth. And because of that vote, this guy is being hit with this bill. I don't know how he pays it. He's going to end his life as a tax debtor, hounded after him. We put liens on property. We garnish wages. We attach bank accounts. We do all sorts of nasty things that were set up to go after tax crooks, real tax evaders. This man was not a tax evader, yet the law is just as harsh. So my message today, if you have any relatives, friends, others that might be because of ill health, because of temporary setback, advancing age, might not be real sharp on filling out government forms, don't be embarrassed about invading their privacy. You go ask them, have you sent in your tax return? Do you owe any quarterly payments? And just check on that and make sure that happens. I've sure learned that lesson. It's something we're doing with Sherry's mom and my mom just to make sure, because things can be forgotten, and we're checking on each other too. It is just too sad to hear those cases come before us like that, when it was an innocent mistake, no intention to evade, and he didn't know the tax. He'd already paid for the interest for Social Security and all that from the estimated payments, I believe. He didn't owe any new tax, and yet we found against him that he did by a large amount. Talk to friends and family, raise the question, even if it's embarrassing or hard to do, because it's about money and other people's personal lives. But the penalties are just too great, and we're so aggressive now in coming after taxpayers because all our government auditors know that, know that the tax revenue is on the line for a state budget, that they squeeze. And this is an easy catch. Someone fails to file a return or files it late or does anything like that. It's just a ministerial error. And whether they even made it or not, whether they even know they did it, is even compounds that by the time they're caught. Because this was several years later, so the interest had compounded monthly after all those years. So thank you for letting me come and get that off my chest. Thank you for inviting me here today. If anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
This is on taxpayers' rights. The State Board of Equalization adopts manuals, assessors' appeals manuals.
Yes.
In particular, I'm talking about. In that manual, it says when the local Board of Equalization conducts a hearing, that's a tribunal, sort of be similar to a court, but it's not a court environment, that the assessor and the taxpayer are to present their case without an attorney, because that's the whole format, is it's supposed to be an informal type of environment. I was in a situation earlier this year that I did a tax appeal, and I walked into the hearing, and I was very surprised to see that everyone was lawyered up. And I say everyone lawyered up, the assessor was lawyered up. And every time I tried to speak, I was getting this objection from the lawyer saying, objection, doesn't conform with the evidence rules, state of California, you know, blah, blah, blah. Trying to shut me down so I can't even plead my case in a tribunal type of setting. What's your feelings on that? What's your comments on that?
You're right, we lost. The issues at hand on property taxes have grown so complex and the dollar values are often very large that what once was a very informal Board of Supervisors meeting on a slow day to handle the appeals is now they either do it themselves or they appoint the Board of Equalization as appointees, and it's become a very, very much more formal process than it once was. I don't see us going back on that. I disagree with the manual. I think taxpayers should have the right to bring anybody they want with them, knowing that it might convince them to lawyer up on their own, but the law is so complex, the rules have so many gray areas that a real innocent taxpayer just has the case stacked against them. So
well, the current manual actually says that that it's supposed to be an environment without the attorney.
I know what it says, and I argued about that one. I said we ought to make it clear that the counties can be as informal as they wish, but taxpayers should not be told they can't bring help if they want to, because this is a contested action. There's dollars at stake, and there's really clear code sections and things like evidence that do have to be honored. So we can talk about it. You know, ours is a much more formal tribunal also compared to the courts. But at the same time, we're under the same risk at our hearings on that because taxpayers without representatives don't do as well because they don't know all the little nuances of the law or our procedure. They're still welcome there. We still hold the hearings on that. But I'm looking at the reality is they don't do well. So in our Taxpayer Rights Advocates Office at our Board of Equalization, I've not only helped up their unit, but I've got them to go out to California's law schools and now bring in third-year law students as for credit and tax classes to help out some of these unrepresented taxpayers who are literally too poor to contest their case, let alone to pay the bill that's due them, just so they get their rights heard in some fashion.
So you're basically saying we should lawyer up now going into those hearings?
Yeah. The counties that want to do it will not step down. We cannot make them do that. So the taxpayer should come fully armed and prepared.
Well, what is the appeals manual? Because it is adopted by the board, but it does say in the beginning that it can be presented as rules in the court of law.
Yes, the way the assessor's manual works is we write it as advisory to all 58 county assessors. If they don't follow it and it ends up in court, which is one if they don't follow it, which I don't think any county follows it completely, let's put it that way. And it ends up in court, which doesn't happen very often. Then the assessor has to convince the judge that the reason they didn't follow it was justified. And that to me is a very low threshold. To tell a judge who knows nothing about property tax hearings, has been doing criminals all day, Now he gets this property tax case, and the county comes in with all the government lawyers again and says, well, we're doing it this way because our county doesn't fit the average, which of course nobody does. We're too big, we're too small, so they do that.
I think we had a question, Supervisor Tryon?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, one question I have is on Governor Schwarzenegger.
Yes.
When he came into office, he was basically spouting Milton Friedman, saying he was sending free
I listened
shoes
to
to all
that,
his friends, et cetera. And then he ran on a platform, and you know, much to my chagrin, I voted for him over Tom McClintock, and wish I never had. But and he was going to fix California and the way we did the budget, et cetera. And then he put those propositions on the ballot to fundamentally alter the way California state government worked, and they all lost. I voted for everyone, and everyone lost. And at that point, it seems to me he totally capitulated. He just basically became a Democrat. And as he's leaving office, you can almost say he's sort of spouting Karl Marx and Al Gore on the way out of office. And if you look at even the regulatory burden, and I was kind of hoping Bob, the CAO, would mention this, but the regulatory burden in California has gotten so great that it's very hard to compete in a business environment. We're building a new jail in San Andres, and we sent some people, our people, to Illinois to look at their new jail, which is a larger capacity and greater square footage. It's a brand new jail. In Illinois, which is a Democratic state and is a big union state, it costs $14 million for them to build this jail. It's going to cost us $30 million, maybe a little more. You look at the road projects that we have, because of prevailing wage, CEQA, Minority Practices Act, et cetera. It costs us 2 or 3 times as much to do a road project as it does in other states. And yet, so you have Schwarzenegger. One question I have is, why such a total capitulation? To me, it's just been a capitulation of just almost ungodly proportions, like a dam breaking. And secondly, both at the national and at the state level, I don't see anything resembling an economic growth program. It seems like the only economic growth program we have is more government spending. It's not that maybe, I mean, one of the great tragedies of the recession we're in right now, in my opinion, is that the Democrats have been able to sell to the American public that the cause of the recession was we were under-regulated. And if you look at California, we're certainly not under-regulated in California by the cost comparisons. I don't think at the national level we're under-regulated, but they've been able to sell the recession on that because it came out of a housing bubble and a financial collapse. Would you just comment a little bit on what a pro-growth program for California would look like? And secondly, why such a total capitulation by Schwarzenegger? Why did we end up where we are when this is exactly what he ran to fix, where we are today? Thank you.
Good, Tom.
Great question. I agree with everything you said, Tom, the supervisor. A pro-growth program for California would start with repealing things like the global warming law. We're not going to save the world on our own. We are. We shouldn't be the only ones doing it. We can't afford it. We should look at our competition and what they're doing. No other state charges sales tax on manufactured equipment. We do. We make a real disincentive to start businesses in California. For corporations, our minimum franchise tax of $800. If you really are a new corporation, you don't have $800 to start with out the door, and it's paid 2 years in advance now. I mean, it's just things like that just add up to burdens. There's a website, I think Wilson actually started it, the governor's webpage, that you put in what county in the California and what city you want to start a business, and you put in what type of business, and it puts out all of the permits you need at all levels. And don't start a service station. I did that one. It's like pages and pages of permits, hazardous waste fees, tire recycling fee, underground storage tank, on and on. that you have to sign up for and then pay on that. And we just do that so many more ways other states do. And we get, I think, very little results for it. We discourage manufacturing. We discourage retail sales. We make it so capital intensive to start a business with nothing to do with the business that you're basically giving up all of your investors' money for state permits and fees and services before you even open the door, made or sold anything. You know, that's how you do economic development. And most counties know that in the state. Most of the cities are much better at that in the state, but they're living under these mandates that the state has, and state rules and regulations. I'm reminded in the point on Schwarzenegger, Speaker Sam Rayburn's line, I think it was about Bobby Kennedy, when he first ran for U.S. Senate. I would have trusted him more if he had started out a dog catcher. And I have that bias. I think we got very lucky with Ronald Reagan. But I think that somebody needs to serve in local office before they get elected to the highest office in the state or the land. So at least you have some sense to look at their voting record, to judge their character. I think what happened to Arnold Schwarzenegger, I think he really is a fan of Milton Friedman. But I think he had no opinion and no knowledge about the stress that the other side would put him under. I mean, these are entrenched interest groups, not just, I'm not talking the legislators because they come and go, but the interest groups that literally surround the Capitol with their offices. I think he had no idea of the stress and pressures they put him under. And so he went out and said, I'll blow up boxes. I cheered him. I donated one of my staff people to his California Performance Review report that's gathering dust somewhere now. He puts those items on the ballot for budget reform and loses badly. And I think it did shake him up. I think he's, again, a politician, an elected official used to losing, at least every now and then, builds their character. He never has. I mean, you really think about it, in every script he did, he always won at the end. You may have think he was going to die, but he always won at the end. When he gets out to the real world, and they kill him and then behead him. I mean, he was dead and then dead. And that has to hurt if you're not ready for it.
But where's the leadership? I mean, we come into this budget shortfall, and a few months ago, Schwarzenegger stands up and says it's a revenue problem. Well, the definition of a revenue problem is to raise taxes.
The Schwarzenegger of yesterday speech, I liked. I was up there close to him. I like what he said. He recognizes it's a spending problem. We've got to cut spending. He's made a proposal that it's a little bit kinky in places, but overall he's tried. So the Schwarzenegger of yesterday, I'm all for. Schwarzenegger a few months ago, I was editorializing my newsletter almost every week on how bad his propositions were and how they wouldn't solve the problem and actually would make things worse. So, but like I've told him and his staff, I said, look, if you do good things that I agree with, I want to tell the world. But if you do bad things that I don't agree with, I want to tell the world. I want to tell it either way. And it doesn't bother me to like you one day and not like you, not like what you're proposing as much the next day, because I think that is what the public debate's about. But I think if he had had elected office somewhere else and had to face those slings and arrows and defend his programs and all out of the total limelight that he's in today as governor, I think it would have strengthened his political character. I remember him talking to a friend of mine, a former legislator, and he said, I don't understand these legislators, why we can't get along and work together. And he said, Governor, how did you get elected? What do you mean? You recall Gray Davis. You know what happened to Gray Davis? His first few budgets were actually fairly responsible. He didn't increase spending as much as Pete Wilson did. And then the legislature got to him. They threatened him in a way that he couldn't say no. And so from then on, he signed every budget, he signed every increase, he increased the car tax. You're only governor today because Gray Davis couldn't stand up to this legislature. Do you think this legislature is going to treat you any better than they treated a governor of their own party? Yes. And he's like stunned, like he'd never thought of that as a concept. And you look at it today, it is still absolutely true. There's no friendship there. There may be political deals, but they don't want to help advance his career at all. If they happen to agree with him, they'll vote on the thing. And they're not going to cut him one bit of slack on any of his plans or proposals unless he does exercise leadership, unless he gets the people on his side, which was a problem May 19th, and we together as the people go tell the legislature, which is what I hope we do in the next few weeks, cut spending in California. We know it hurts, we know it's bad, we don't have a choice.
And last question?
Last question?
Yeah, we got another
Okay,
speaker.
I'll make it short, sir. Almost. Two things. Is there a way to fight and delay the so-called loans from the county to the state? That's one. The other one is, what would be the consequences? And I'm not sure, is it a receivership or bankruptcy to the state? Because basically, the impression I get, it's a pretty slimy situation overall, okay? And people realize it. And unless you wipe it pretty clean and start from scratch, because you can see right now the special interests fighting each other. It's going to get worse as time comes. And the longer you can delay stealing the money from the counties, you're not going to get money from the bank. The more they're going to fight each other. So I would like to, about the receivership bankruptcy, and can the counties delay or not loan the money that they want to borrow? So
I think the burden's on the counties and local governments to substitute. They don't want to be hit with a $2 billion forced loan. They've got to offer up to the legislature $2 billion of something else. And then provide
IOUs?
political support to make it happen. That's the tough part, because it'll be some other interest group they're going after. I don't know what will happen. I just don't know. Because this is now set every interest group against each other. And the drop is so big that you can't just not do it. You've got to substitute items to do that. On the other question, because of the sovereignty of the state of California as a part of the United States of America, there is no bankruptcy. Counties can go bankrupt, cities can go bankrupt, schools can go bankrupt, states cannot go bankrupt. We've never had a state go bankrupt. What we've had is states totally reorganized without a receiver, without a bankruptcy judge saying that contract's suspended or that's what happened in the 30s. That's probably our best precedence for how a state might go about doing it. And the way to do it is, without a judge helping you on an order, is to go and repeal the wage contracts, the entitlement programs, and just try to undo them on your own as a legislature and a governor. Much tougher than going into court and having a judge just say, I order that contract voided, and now you guys go talk. There is no bankruptcy. So what the governor's doing today is probably the best way to get the debate on the table.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, we're reserving the best, of course, for the last. And that's Linda. Linda Churches is our county auditor and controller, and she's won her leadership has earned state and national acknowledgement for the Calaveras County Auditor Controller's Office. And in addition, she's won a lot of awards, but one of the ones that's most special to our hearts, she's won our award as for our annual award for excellence in public service. And we were so proud to give that to her a few months back. Linda, come up and say a few words, if you would.
Good afternoon. I realize that we're negative 1 minute left remaining. Anyway, I'll make this very quick. I left all my other notes at the table. But I did want to let everyone know, I think last time I was here, I spoke a little bit on my perception of taxes, and I am a taxpayer, and I totally disagree on what's been going on with the state. And like Tom had mentioned, one of my big concerns is, the governor had promised to blow up the boxes, which all he did is play a shell game and move them around and make them bigger. And I also advocated taxpayers protesting, and which I was very pleased when I saw even our local group was protesting. And I think that worked. And I did talk to Corey at the fair and about the protest, and I said, well, I hope they keep it up. I mean, you can't slow down, you can't stop. It's like when the price of gasoline was going up, and I'm going, good, it needs to go up. It needs to go up even more. Things will not change, so people cannot afford to drive. And so then it got to the point where everyone was having a conniption fit, and pretty soon it drops down. We all get complacent again, and it starts shooting up. We have to take control of what is affecting us. And another thing, I know this is not related to the Auditor Controller's Office, I'm on my soapbox, but when it comes to the economy, we're always talking about the economy and what is wrong. And I have been advocating for years, we don't have to do all these strange machinations of all types of flipping and flopping and the triple flipping and all that type of stuff. Our trade deficit is so phenomenal, trillions of dollars, and over half of it is just with China. If we would fix our trade deficit, does anyone have a clue what it would do to our local economy, our state economy, and national? All our dollars are going overseas, all the manufacturing, almost everything. A few weeks ago, I was looking at some of my notes where I was cleaning out one of my old drawers that was not too long after the Tiananmen Square in China. And when taxpayers were all irate, it's like, don't buy anything from China. Well, I was looking at my note and it had all these little types of things listed not to buy. And I had a great idea. It said, and it was just before Easter, it said, buy eggs from your local farmer and dye them, and please do not have any plastic Easter eggs from China. I'm going, wonderful, that's what I do anyway. But, so there's many things that we can do as consumers to try to help our economy. One is buy local and hopefully have a lot more things made in America. I know when Walmart started becoming the big entity that it is, everyone used to say, oh, let's shop at Walmart. Almost everything's made in America. Well, I think that's changed quite a bit. So anyway, off my soapbox on the economy. One thing that I just wanted to point out, we talked a lot about the state. The State Controller, John Ching, and this is on May 22nd, said that the state essentially has no cash, no prospects for more. The state has not had a positive cash balance since July 12, 2007. Since that time, the general fund has relied on internally borrowed money from special funds, which it now owes $20 billion on demand. As he pointed out, it is one firestorm or earthquake away from complete fiscal meltdown. It also means that while the budget deficit stands at 20 to 25 billion, the cash deficit is about 40 billion. So to me that is, I mean, it's just astronomical how we can even get in this position. And I know, you know, as a taxpayer group, I think we kind of, I perceive us, and I think others do, as mainly focusing on, you know, property taxes and the Prop 13 and trying to protect those. But I think there's a lot to be said for, like Bill was mentioning about income taxes and the franchise tax board. You know, it's all our money. I think we need to watch everything and not just property taxes. And I just wanted to point out one thing that I just found, and it's a petition that starts a ballot initiative to raise taxes on pensions. And this measure would place a new tax on Californians who make more than $40,000 in pensions, Social Security, and the cash value of health care benefits. So this is in the initiative, or they're trying to get it on the ballot, and so I hope if anyone sees something like that, or if it gains a little more momentum, that instead of having a tea party, we have something a little bit bigger. Anyway, so any questions?
That's short of armed rebellion.
Well, that might work too.
Oh, not drawing any lines, huh?
We can't afford big banners yet, so we have a small banner. It says Tax Rebellion, 1773, 2009, and that we passed out at our first tea party. Linda, you're just a sweetheart. Am I the only that government is to the people, the better job it does. Look at our county government. It's being abused by the other levels of government. Look at our state government. Well, it's pretty bad, but it's not as bad as the federal government. So as we get closer to the people, we seem to have better government. So this is one of the reasons why our Taxpayers Association networks with other associations. We network with the Tea Party Patriots, which are nationwide. It's that network that can make the difference. The only lobby you have to oppose the tax lobby, the government tax lobby, is the taxpayer organizations. When they are strong, you're protected. And we've been asleep too long, but we're waking up now. Anybody have anything for the good of the order? Okay, I got a hand there.
Just a question.
Sure.
Recently I sent around email some pictures of the Chicago Tea Party. Did anybody see them in the news? I did. There were a lot of them and a lot of people there.
Well, look at our own
A lot
news.
of that.
Yeah, we were fortunate, when we did our Tea Party, we sent out press releases, we do for all our stuff, and they weren't printed. But when we had the Tea Party, afterwards, we were front page in both papers. And they probably felt bad, but that's the way it goes.
No better.
Okay, we really thank you. Oh, we have to finish our raffle now? So,
Oh, we have
we're raffle?
one more. Hey, give me the tickets.
No, you can't.
Yeah, Bob? Yes.
I'd like to ask Bill Leonard's advice.
You'll never get out of
And
line.
he's painted a pretty very quick picture of the border show in Sacramento. But I'd like to ask you, Bill, where is the best place for we as a taxpayer association to deploy our forces?
Well, what Al just said, and what Linda talked about is network with the other associations, write every legislator, and yours are clearly, of course, but look for who's in leadership positions in the legislature, write the governor. I found what happens, a lot of these legislators will say, well, nobody ever wrote me that it was a bad idea. Good. And I go to their district and they say, well, we know that guy would never vote our way. I said, but you can't let him get away with saying that no one ever told me it was a bad idea. You got to write everybody, email them. It's easy to do now. Network with others and just keep building it. And like Linda said, don't stop with one Tea Party.
Thank you.
Piggyback on that comment, we had 141 people sign our petition to the state and to the federal government calling for both of them to downsize, actually shrink, and balance their budgets. In the case of the federal government, we wanted them to also follow the Constitution. 141 people in our county signed that, and at the time, the major media was trying to make it like we're nuts or something, or we're right-wing people that were going to be grabbing our guns and Bibles and whatever. Yeah, and so it was a fear. We didn't know what's going to happen at the Tea Party. We don't know if they're going to be agitators that come in there and try to hurt us or what, or pretend to be patriots and really are not. But there was none of that. It was just kind of a joyful thing, and it was really successful. And those petitions were mailed, not only to the governor, but also to our representatives. Yes.
Yeah, maybe you should hire your acorn to go.
That's who we were afraid of them. Anything else? Okay, let's
Just a quick comment.
Okay.
At the bottom of this whole thing, of course, it's the voters who are voting those people. I've said it for years. The problem with democracy is that it does not guarantee good government. It guarantees representative government. If you've got poorly informed, naive voters, you get poorly informed, naive government.
We want to reverse that.
We need to aim at those folks.
That's what we're here for. Okay, we got a raffle continuing now with how many more prizes?
We have 7 prizes, I believe.
Don't even